Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to have you here today. My name is Henrik Bick. I'm here with the communications team at the Music Business Association. Glad to welcome you to today's Common Ground webinar series webinar, where we'll talk with Dolby about innovations in immersive audio tech and how it's already being used in the marketplace today. But before I introduce today's presenters, I just have a couple of housekeeping notes for you. For today's session, if you would like to connect with one another in the chat, be sure to change your chat setting to everyone so folks can see your messages. And we'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation. There's a dedicated Q&A box on your Zoom dashboard that you'll use to submit questions for our presenters, and we will answer them at the end of the show. Outside of webinars, we have a couple of events coming up. First up is the one that will kick off 2022 for music biz and for the music industry, Nylon Connect 2022, happening January 18th to the 21st via Socio. It's our first Nylon Connect via Socio, and it brings you the ability of networking like you're in a room with folks, but in a virtual platform. So as we're still navigating hybrid events here, it's a great opportunity for you to learn about what the music industry is going to be focusing on in the coming year, while also meeting with executives like yourself to talk about these issues. We've announced our first 3 keynote speakers for the event. You can learn all about that via our website, musicbiz.org, or via nylonconnect.com. There you'll also be able to register for the event as well. And then coming up shortly before the summer of next year, we will be returning to the JW Marriott Nashville for our Music Biz 2022 annual conference, May 9th to the 12th, 2022. Registration for the event is now open, as well as our call for presentations. We have just about over a month for you to submit your best ideas for programs and panel presentations that will help inform a collaborative approach in financial growth in the music industry, as well as improving diversity and working conditions for those who call the music industry home. Stay tuned in the coming months as we begin to roll out more details about the program and what you can expect from Music Biz 2022. Bringing it back to webinars, we are coming towards the end of the fall/winter here. So we have a couple more sessions left, and we hope to see you there. First up, on November 18th, we'll have a discussion on creators' rights with Utopia Music and Nydia Research. And then in December, we'll have 2 final concluding sessions. We'll talk to Lyric Find about how you can use your artist's song lyrics to open up new revenue streams for artists and rights holders. And talk with Linkfire about turning marketing buzz into fan engagement and building fan bases. But enough about future webinars. Let's talk about today's webinar. I am going to pass the floor over now to today's presenters. Please welcome Christine Thomas, Dolby's Head of Music Partnerships, Kara Mukherjee, the VP of Digital Strategy and Business Development of Warner Music Group, and Jason Jones, Director of A&R for Rhino Entertainment. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Henrik. Kara, Jason, thank you so much for being here with us on this chat today. Really excited to talk with you. So I think maybe, if you don't mind, just a little bit of an overview of what Dolby Atmos is and what we're doing for anyone who's not yet aware, though I hope that's not the case. And then maybe you can share with me a little bit about each of you and what your roles are at Warner Music Group, and we'll go from there. So Dolby Atmos is, I would say it's a revolution. It emerged in markets through movies about 9 years ago, then to television about 6 years ago, and music about 2 years ago. Our first adopters from a streaming services perspective were Amazon Music and Tidal. Before that, there were Blu-rays and DVDs that were being created and recreated in Dolby Atmos. But the advent of music really became more apparent about 2 years ago. Warner Music was one of our early partners, and it's an absolute pleasure and joy to work with them on a daily basis. They are definitely helping to lead the charge. Since that original launch, I should say, we're now on 6 music services. We're absolutely thrilled about working with Apple on a daily basis. They're a terrific partner, of course. We're also on, in addition to Amazon Music and Tidal, Ungama, Ungami, and Vibe. And of course, there's more to come. As we always say, stay tuned. In terms of the playback experience, certainly, again, we're on Apple products. We're actually across over 1 billion devices globally, and that gives people access to listening to it on the go, in their homes, certainly in performance spaces. If you haven't heard about Dolby Live at Park MGM in Vegas, it's really exciting. You can perform live in Dolby Atmos and have that in-person experience. We're also now in auto. Lucid Motors delivered their first cars last weekend, and now Mercedes has announced Dolby Atmos in the car. So really, really exciting times. What we do is we work very closely with the music industry, from major labels to independents, across streaming services partners, such as those I've mentioned, and of course, with studios, with creatives, and often with the artist teams themselves as well. And we're really putting our technology in the hands of the creative community and helping them through tools and education to adopt the technology and understand how to unleash the power of their vision. And then what we do, of course, is work with all of the amazing marketing teams across all of our partners, as well as at Dolby, to bring awareness of the experience. I'm just going to do one more little housekeeping just to let everyone know. There was a question about whether we'll share a slide deck. There won't be a slide deck. We're going to have a conversation really upfront and honest between Dolby and Warner Music about what's going on with Dolby Atmos. And you will not need to take detailed notes, but hopefully you will take away a lot of goodness today. So without further ado, just one more piece to let everyone know about. Dolby is really founded on a love for music. Ray Dolby was an absolute audiophile. He loved classical music. He didn't love tape hiss. And when he solved that challenge, it generated, again, a continuous passion and a long history of an amazing company full of people who love music, in many cases are musicians and still practice. So that's really who we are in our DNA. It's this attachment to music that is very base for really all of us. And also, the creative community, that commitment to creative intent, that's fundamental to who we are. We don't develop tools in a vacuum. We work with all of you and with all of your creative partners to ensure that what we're sharing with the world is something that is wanted, that is needed, and that brings, again, that power and that persuasion to the creative community. So Cara, maybe you can please help us to by sharing a little bit about your role and a little bit about what Warner Music is doing with Dolby Atmos.
Yep. Hi, everybody. And thanks, Christine. Thanks for the intro. So hi, I'm Cara Mukherjee, and I'm VP of BizDev Executions in the Warner Music BizDev team. So our wider team, I don't exist within a label. We're in the corporate side. Our wider BizDev team, we're really charged with kind of future-proofing the Warner Music business and our labels and our artists. And in order to do that, we arm them with creative tools and opportunities, with new and existing biz partners and new technologies and new formats and anything that is really kind of innovative and helps us drive our industry forward and art forward. So spatial audio is just a really fundamental part of that. So whether we're talking about gaming or new playback experiences in auto, or just premium audio playback experiences in DSPs, or new physical hardware and devices, I mean, that's where we're really leaning in. So my role and my team and our department, our role is to really kind of bring these partnerships and this technology to life for the artists and for the consumers. So that's why I'm here. In terms of Warner Music, I mean, we're one of the major record labels in the world. We've got content in every genre on every continent on the planet. Actually, I take that back. I don't think we cover Antarctica, but there are definitely people streaming, sharing in Antarctica somewhere right now. We cover so many labels. Obviously, we've got the Atlantics and the Parlophones and the Warner Records, but we've also got Warner Music Nashville, Arts Music, which is, children's and musical and theater and cinema soundtracks. We've got Warner Music Classics. We've got all of our territory labels. So Warner Music India, where, Angami, is much more relevant rather than Apple Music here. So we've got Australia, France, East Asia for different DSPs elsewhere. We've got Spinnin' Records, and we distribute hundreds and hundreds of independent labels and artists through ADA. So, the vast majority of all of those independents, if not all of them, are also delivering in Atmos. So we've got a whole kind of global and multi-label community effort here. We feel really passionate about Atmos and spatial music across the board, across our roster, across all genres.
Loving it.
That's me, that's us.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I love it. Jason, can you tell me a little bit about how this shows up for you? Of course, you're with Rhino, which is such a critical component of this. I'm asked about catalog on a regular basis, of course, and you've really helped to spearhead the forefront of this.
Thank you. And thank you, Christine, for having me today. And hello, everyone out there in internet land. My name is Jason Jones, and I'm Director of A&R for Rhino Entertainment, which is the catalog division of Warner Music Group, where I oversee content and product development from our rich roster of artists, as well as the curation and production of catalog releases. Now, this is inclusive of releases that are ultimately mixed and released in spatial audio. And Dolby's been a really great partner throughout that process. So it's fun. At the end of the day, it's really
That's
fun.
fabulous.
You get to listen to music. Yeah.
That's
fabulous.
So tell me, so it comes from the vision, right, that Cara is sharing, and it materializes to you, right? And how do you approach this? Talk to me about how you're talking to artists. Tell me how you're embarking upon the adventure of sharing Dolby Atmos as an experience.
Well, it mainly comes from the content and product development process that we go through, based on our fiscal year's release schedule. So it's everything from looking at upcoming anniversaries for important albums, looking at tentpole cultural moments. Sometimes it's a release that's tied to an artist's kind of like larger activity, but ultimately, where it all kind of starts is in the asset research process. Because if you don't have multis or stems, then you kind of can't create something out of nothing in a way. But once we kind of establish that process, then that's where the real kind of artist relations aspect of it comes along, which is, sometimes you're talking to artists and management who are keenly aware of spatial audio and have either home devices themselves or mobile devices that are already using spatial audio as a part of their daily listening experience. Sometimes it is truly explaining the format, and sometimes that leads to demos of the actual format itself. And that's usually, it's kind of fun to have the artists and management kind of have that eureka moment, whenever it all kind of clicks. That's some of the fun in it. And that's where the creative process starts to really come into play. So yeah, that's kind of how the conversation goes. Now, that's not to say that, there are certain artists who kind of can't understand it, or management who are, like, I don't know what this is. So, sometimes there's pushback, but, ultimately we get to where we want to go. Sometimes it just takes longer than it's case by case.
I love hearing you talk about starting with the experience, because I think that's absolutely what we do and believe in. Fundamentally, this is something that they have to want to do. They have to understand. Again, I talk about the power a lot, right? The power of from a creative perspective, as well as a business perspective, right? So they have to understand what it is, and that takes being exposed to it. And that takes being there to answer those questions. I really love that you talk about leading with that, because I think that it's tough to explain technology. Tried, by the way, doing it through a computer for a couple of years to talk about sound. But it is when they have that experience, so many, oh, wow, oh, incredible, and some expletives. But some that passion and that excitement once they understand the experience. I think one of the things that I want to make sure we touch on is when I talk about power and freedom, when we talk about tools integration and what does that mean, it's important for people to understand that Dolby Atmos creation capability is natively integrated in all of the market's favorite tool sets. Pro Tools, Nuendo, Pyramix, now Logic, and there are panners also available from these folks and Ableton and others. So it's imperative to understand that it's accessible for the creative and for the artist, and now, of course, at a composition level. And I'm loving what Logic just did. But it's also important to understand that it's not what 5.1 was or surround was, and it's not nailing up a sound to a speaker. It's really pushing a sound into a space wherever you want that space to be. And the importance for different genres, right? I mean, an acoustic piece can be very, very special in Atmos. You know, I always say a guy on a guitar or a gal on a guitar. Just that simplicity of the space and the clarity that it allows for being able to hear that artist, you know, breathe and strum and these things. That's the creative aspect of it. And do you have to get into the business piece? I mean, do you think they're understanding the whole, this is a new distribution opportunity for them? I mean, I'm not asking you any secrets, but that this has to be fundamental to the storytelling, right?
And it is. I mean, and we'd be lying if there weren't questions. So any new technology, any new format comes around, and artists want to know how is it going to sound? How do they create for it? What's the user experience? And how can everybody, you know, best live in this new world? So yeah, absolutely, there are questions about you know, what this looks like in future. I would say, just to touch on your point, Christine, about it, you know, working across different genres, you're completely right. So I work with, as mentioned beforehand, with all the territories and across all of our labels with different genres. And the playback experience and the mixing experience for doing something with an orchestra, 72-piece orchestra, is completely different to when we are retrospectively remixing an iconic album or an iconic soundtrack. So yeah, the user experience is totally different for each of those, and the mixing experience and in-studio experience is totally different for each of those. So it is really fundamental that it's part of the kind of best practice in the studio process moving forward, and it's ubiquitous for all engineers and accessible for all engineers moving forward, because we need, you know, we work with thousands of studios worldwide, and we're seeing increasingly this is a kind of a standardized skill. Everybody's plugging into it. So yeah, we're really great that there's that kind of that literacy across the board increasingly now.
I love it. So I had a funny experience watching Jason and I vehemently shaking, you know, nodding our heads.
Aggressively agreeing.
Yeah. Passion agreement. But Jason, I think that's a great segue into talking a little bit about the engineers and the process and how you're approaching the market.
Well, it's interesting because just being a part of the Warner Music Network, you know, I'm able to see it from both the frontline perspective and also from a catalog perspective. So like from a frontline perspective, there is just the basic technical aspect of it, which to me is just an additional layer of the pre-existing mixing process. You know, if you already have an engineer who's working on mixes and they have an Atmos setup, which more than likely they do now, then the Atmos mix is just another deliverable alongside your radio edits, etc. But to me, the most exciting thing about it from a frontline perspective is the creative aspect of composing and writing for the medium and contemplating arrangements in a way that are applicable to the medium. And that's incredibly exciting. You know, it's the same potential growth from a production perspective as the expansion from, you know, 4-track to 8-track in the 60s, you know, and so on and so on. You know, you're essentially going from mono to stereo all over again, you know. Now, from a catalog perspective, it's a potentially more complicated process. As again, I kind of touched on this earlier, you're kind of at the mercy of what physical or digital assets you actually have on hand. You know, we have a fantastic library and vault system through Warner Music Group. And we have great people in our library services department who work tirelessly to properly catalog and transfer assets. However, there are just certain things that just aren't there physically, which can be, you know, that can prevent certain immersive experiences. You know, if you don't have multi-tracks or stems, it's very hard to create something out of nothing. Deja vu saying that again. But because, you know, it's just the fact if you're trying to work with something from the 50s or 60s and all you have is a 2-track stereo master, or sometimes all you have is a mono master, then that's where it gets challenging.
Yeah.
However,
yes, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, go for it.
Because I know that you guys, that's fair. That's totally reasonable. I know that you've employed some creative processes such as reamping, hanging extra mics and things like that in some cases with some of the challenging legacy content. I don't know if you're seeing more of that or not, but I mean, I know that there have been some tips and tricks, and yeah, I know it's a labor of love.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's like, to me, there's no better. It all goes back to the source material.
Yeah.
You know, it's best. You're going to have the best user experience, and honestly, the best artist experience if you're working from the original stems or the original multis.
Yeah.
You know, like that's just a fact. You know, and I think that. Well, I'm getting into an area that I probably shouldn't get into. but yeah, no,
I'm here for you.
Yeah, but I think that it all goes back to the source material.
Understood. Tell me a little bit about this. We're hearing a lot about how to speed things up, and extract and automation is where I'm going. React to me. I love that. React to me about automation.
I think mixing to me is it's a dynamic process, and it's a human process in a way. And I think that each composition should be given the TLC that it deserves. If you're automating a process, you know, if you're throwing up a classic 90s hip hop track and a classical track, and you're just boom, boom doing them, you know, there's a different perspective that needs to be attached to the creative process of mixing each of those different genres. So I'm personally not a fan of an automated, you know, dumping kind of process. You know, I think you need to show the art, you need to give it the respect that it deserves, you know, because ultimately, you know, it is art at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you kind of addressed it, but I really wanted you to do it kind of head on. So thanks for that. I mean, I think they need to hear from you, right? The community needs to hear from the people who are there owning and trying to protect the integrity of the content. And I know, Kari, you know, you guys have been doing that from an international perspective as well. And I just, you know, I think there's a lot of sensitivity, and we're often asked, you know, are there services and solutions for this to be, you know, easier, cheaper, faster? And my guidance is, you know, speak with your partners. But what I'm hearing from the community passionately is these are paintings, and we're painters, and this is art, and we need to protect the integrity of the art. But again, no one better to articulate that than you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Christine, I realized that I didn't actually answer your question earlier on about kind of commercial conversations with artists, but then this plugs back into.
I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you exactly. I know better.
Yes. All right. But I mean, to tackle that sort of area, I mean, Atmos is, as you say, on, you know, multiple DSPs globally, and yeah, naturally artists do ask about, well, if these new formats exist, spatial exists, Atmos exists, how can they plug into that?
Yeah.
So we are having, you know, these artistic conversations around sort of engineers and who the best visionaries are to kind of bring this to life in spatial format, but also they want their art, their vision represented on the DSPs as well. You know, and then Atmos allows that to happen. So we're kind of tackling these conversations with artists and estates from both ends. To answer that was your question earlier on. Yeah.
Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you. And maybe it's a good way to lead into maybe some of the amplification that you guys are doing with so many of the amazing projects that are coming out. For me, I'll just be honest, Alanis Morissette was a deep and passionate love, you know, earlier in my life. So, but it's just, obviously you've done a number of really, really cool campaign work. And can you talk about how you're thinking about that?
Well, you know, it kind of goes back to with Alanis, it was something where, you know, we had a 25th anniversary coming up. We had touring activity for the artist. We had a management group who were really keen to get Alanis into an immersive audio space. So it's, you know, it goes back to discovery and the user experience. You know, ultimately, I want all the artists that I work with to be discoverable. And I want the blood, sweat, and tears that they put into their craft to be available and potentially in front of as many potential listeners as possible. You know, it's engaging with art is always something that can alter someone's perception of what creativity is and ultimately alter their life, hopefully. And if Atmos is an opportunity for that experience to happen, then let's go for it. With Alanis, it was really fun because she was really, really excited about the format, but had never had any experience with the format before. She'd only heard from her colleagues in the industry about what the potential was within the format. And she had to approve the mixes alongside me, and hearing You Ought to Know, like, completely bludgeon you in a way to where you're completely immersed, no pun intended, in the intensity of that song. That was really, really special. And also, just on a personal note, that was something where the approval process and creation of that project happened in one of the peak COVID times.
Yeah.
So to be in a room with more people than I had seen in the last like 6 months, but we were all kind of connected through this project, and listening to the playback of it all, it was to be able to see so many people smiling through the masks.
Yeah.
Like it was like, that was just like a magical thing. And Alanis was like touched whenever relayed that experience.
I love that.
So it was a really, I don't know, like it's a different way to rewire a muscle memory around things that you've listened to for X number of years.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to put it. I think what we hear a lot of is, in some cases, people wanting to maintain the original perspective, perfectly great. And in some cases, people wanting to completely reimagine a piece, right? Just really express themselves in a way that they certainly could not have in the past.
Yep.
And they ask what we recommend and what they should do. And, what we recommend is take advantage of the opportunity to do as you prefer, right? It's art. So again, it's creative intent, it's creative vision, and it's making those decisions. It's the ability to make those decisions. I love, again, it's special to me. I know her to be an audiophile and a brilliantly talented person. So really, really exciting project. Thank you for sharing that with us. If I can ask you, Cara, what I think is interesting is obviously we're having so many, conversations around some of the things that you shared before, and we're thinking about this more broadly too. Dolby Atmos is available across OTT platforms pretty broadly and well adopted as a standard, as a master standard for so many. And so is Dolby Vision, our visual technology, of course. So there's the ability, as we were discussing earlier, for long form, movies, concerts, etc., imagined, reimagined, etc., composed anew, which is the most amazing opportunity, right? Really understanding what the opportunity is from the beginning and thinking that way through your composition process. It's also available for short form, and of course, there's the behind the scenes, and there's the potential of music videos and all kinds of incredible things that can be done. And of course, Pearl Jam's been a great partner. A little noise. We are home, folks. So of course, Pearl Jam's been a great partner, and what happened with Gigaton was really exciting on Apple TV Plus. So I know you're thinking about that through more than just movie media, but I didn't know if you wanted to say anything more about how you guys see these visceral experiences maybe in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember whether I said at the start or not, but I mean, Warner, like everybody in the music industry, should be thinking, we're a content company. Like, artist worlds and creative visions come about not purely through audio experiences, but by whole content ecosystems. And whether that is short form viral content or VR worlds or in gaming experiences or, you know, live stream festivals. You know, that's the future that we're heading towards. I mean, we've seen all of this stuff, you know, announcements in the last few weeks about, you know, metaverse, and whether we like it or not, that's where the content ecosystem and our future existence is kind of heading. So yeah, we're thinking about all of our content in that world and consumers in that world. So yes, we've got legacy content. We've got really, really iconic film soundtracks and live films. We've got music documentaries. You know, we will always have live existing promotional events. We're always going to have pop-ups that are going to be films and scalable broadcast globally in future. You know, we're always going to have experiential, you know, events and cinema events. Like, there's a lot here beyond just sitting on a streaming service and putting on a pair of headphones. Right. So we're always going to create content for that future, and we're always going to have a lot of legacy content that needs to be mixed and delivered in a futuristic way.
I love that. I'm going to glom onto one more thing you said, because I think it's an important point about headphones. Mm-hmm. So thank you. From a Dolby perspective, I'll say, you know, it's absolutely a fact that every product partner and streaming partner, every partner in the world today and always will implement in a slightly different manner. They have their own tonal reference, right? Their own fidelity. But it's interesting to me that some expect that they would have the exact same experience in a room full of speakers, which is magnificent and such an incredible opportunity, as they might on headphones, right? Because there's a matter of physics. And of course, there is a difference in the experience, though, again, even between partners. And how do you attack that? Because you were just talking about, you know, the different environments. And I mentioned live performance. Like, how do you attack that? Are you able to articulate the difference between the experiences?
On the streaming partners or in the physical environments?
I would say across them, right? Because now we just made it more complicated for you. Now there's a car.
Yeah, exactly. I would say, you know, your at-home cinema versus your actual cinema versus your experiential kind of playback pop-up versus your in-car commute versus your, I'm in London, so in-tube commute. These are all different acoustic environments. And what's most important is that the integrity of the vision of the engineer and the artist in studio is preserved. So whatever listening environment and whatever DS or streaming partner and whatever headphones you're listening on, it's about preserving the integrity of that initial vision.
Agreed. And what do you say about mixing twice, or mixing for multiple services or multiple devices?
Oh, no, I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, purely from a kind of product delivery perspective, it doesn't make sense either. That's a kind of, you can't have duplicates and triplicates of albums across different streaming partners. Yeah, it actually doesn't work. So we're you know, it's one format, and we're working. You know, we're in a future where it will be experienced slightly differently in a physical environment in my kitchen versus in my car, but it needs to be a single experience.
Agreed. It's also early days. So there's a lot of work that's going on, a lot of learnings that's going on because of all the feedback of everyone who's in our audience today, and as well as you guys, you know, who have been terrific and vocal partners. And I think there's a learning that's taking place in terms of how one implements and experiences fidelity. So I think our partners will learn from this experience, and very, very quickly, given what we're seeing in terms of adoption. Again, I certainly absolutely love, you know, our engagement, and I'm confident that that's the case, that you will continue to lean in there. Should we move to some questions from the audience? Are you guys good with that? Or did you want to add any other points before we do that?
I'm fine with that.
Great. Okay, good. So we have quite a few, as a matter of fact. Just going to scroll up and see what we want to start with. Bear with me 1 minute. So Emma asks, how can A&R and management teams educate their new artists and labels about the fundamentals of Dolby Atmos? How do you how do you execute the demo itself? I'm going to let you take a stab at this, Jason.
Yeah, well, it depends. You know, again, it goes back to what it depends on if you have mobile capabilities or not, you know, or if you have the ability to actually listen in studio. because again, it kind of touches on what Cara just said, to where it is, you have different experiences in different scenarios and in different environments. So I actually prefer to try to hit both a mobile and a studio experience to just give everyone a clear idea of what the actual user experience is like. Not everyone has that luxury, but if you can do it, I highly recommend it.
I do want to clarify too for everyone. So there are almost 350 music studios working in Dolby Atmos, and those are physical studios. Some are publicly bookable and some are owned by the people that you hire generally in market, right? But those are rooms that are equipped today, and that is scaling extremely quickly. I'm blown away by the numbers. It's literally a daily increase, and it's global, right? That's really, really important to note. In addition to that, people are working on headphones, and that is also a completely valid workflow. What's imperative from our perspective is just, again, understanding that translation between environments and getting mixers back to working as they would, right? So there is the agility to working on headphones, and that's fabulous. So you can have that single mix that Cara spoke about, which is such an imperative, and just understanding how that will translate, and you might make adjustments just as you would with stereo, right? So that's a key.
I just jump in on that, and I'd say, just in addition to what you said, Christine, I think it's really important that a mix is understood with the user playback on headphones. It's very rare. Like, we have our artist demos and we have professional discussions, and we explain the format in a studio and on a headphone environment, because
Yes.
ultimately that's what a lot of the user experience is going to be. So
That's
it's really important that that both mixes are experienced and created for.
And that it's not.
I think of it.
Go on.
I think about Dave Grohl. Okay, whenever he's mixing any of or working on any of the Foo Fighters albums, he always says that he listens in the studio, he listens in his whatever Dodge Charger or something like that, that's has blown out speakers, just because he wants it to sound great in whichever environment in which you engage with his art. It's the same thing across the board.
That's absolutely right.
Because ultimately you have to stand behind the integrity of what you're putting out there. And if ultimately the listener does not have the greatest experience possible, you're losing an opportunity. You're losing an opportunity for someone to engage with a new format. You're also losing an opportunity for someone to engage with you as an artist.
That's absolutely right. And actually, so Michael Romanowski makes a very good point. I mean, the mastering engineers are working in Dolby Atmos, and they are working to ensure that that translation has integrity as well, and to try to help also to educate. So, lean on your mastering partners, right? They know how to help and to ensure that that translation has, again, integrity and intent. The other thing, Sam Danny has asked me to remind everyone, he's absolutely right. We have a rather brilliant resource. It is, if I do say so for myself, which I'm not responsible for, so it's a compliment to others, but at professional.dolby.com, there are quick start videos, long form videos, webinars, white papers, cheat sheets, FAQs. There are a multitude of resources, and there are links to partners' resources. And we all lean on those. We lean on those at Dolby. We lean on those with our label partners. And the questions that I'm seeing about the access, do indies have access to resources as well? Absolutely. And again, remember, please, that Warner's the parent company of a number of indies as well as distributor for them, and those indies also use those resources. So I can certainly speak to that. And then in terms of services, distribution services, there is a question for me here about indies and distribution services. So all of the major distributors are actually, and you can see this on Apple's partner page, are actually delivering to Apple Music today. Most of those same distributors are delivering to Tidal and to Amazon Music. Some are still on a manual feed to the other services versus an automated feed, but you don't need to worry, they know how to handle it, and they're doing just a genius job, and that is ramping up. Also, frankly, they go a little faster the more they hear from you. So yes, absolutely, indies have all of the same capabilities with Dolby Atmos that majors do. Majors have done the hard work of helping to lead the charge in terms of throwing their name at it, but you definitely all have the same opportunities. Okay. Arthur asks, thanks Aaron for that question, I should note. Arthur asks, how does Dolby implement Atmos education and music education curriculum? We are actually rather broadly implemented across universities, academies, master's classes, et cetera, et cetera. And again, this is globally. There is a page which we'll try to post to you here in the chat today, but in addition to what you might find on the page, there's more. So we're Blackbird Academy and 1500 and so on, and you know, Berklee School of Music. They integrate our learnings, our training components into their core curriculum. They do it with their tone, of course, their goodness. And then we continue to lean in. We're not done. We're working on that piece all of the time. Education is absolutely the singularly most fundamental part of garnering Dolby Atmos music adoption. So thanks for that question. Kelly asked, Jason talked about this a little bit. How does Warner Music prioritize back catalog or frontline releases for Atmos? And how does Rhino prioritize their backlog catalog releases for Atmos? Quite specific, Jason.
Ooh, let's see here. I mean, ultimately, let's see here. I mean, ultimately, you look at, it's a combination of looking at what is the evergreen content and also decisions that are informed by just our release schedule, you know. So it's a combination of those two things that kind of dictates where we move within the spatial audio space.
And I can tell you that that is really, really consistent. That is what I'm hearing from all indies and what I'm hearing from all majors. It's really consistent. So thanks for being bold and taking that one. I do.
Can I just jump in on the frontline piece on that one? I know Jason also mentioned it earlier on, but I mean, we're just considering a spatial audio mix as standard best practice moving forward for frontline. I mean, when an artist is in studio and we feel that they're in a studio that is sufficiently enabled, the engineer is skilled, and everybody understands the artist vision, either the artist or the engineer, they're going to be creating a spatial mix. We're going to get a clean mix that's like radio friendly, probably a radio shortened mix, maybe an extended mix, and a spatial mix. It's just absolutely, you know, standard best practice moving forward for us. So it's not so much a matter of like how we're prioritizing frontline moving forward. It's, you know, if it's there, then yeah, we're going to get an Atmos mix of it.
Same thing in the catalog space as well. You know, if I'm trying to develop a forthcoming release for, you know, 2022 or 2023, you know, and I'm looking at session reels and I find unreleased material and I find the multi-tracks, guess what? I make sure that I make note of that so that I can make sure that we have the proper time and budget attached to a spatial audio mix.
Love it. That's fantastic. Love it. I just want to do another call for questions and make sure that we get to everybody. I'm seeing some sharing of information in the chat, which is absolutely terrific. And I also want to make sure that I give Cara and Jason a minute to respond. We do have another one. Okay, good. I am going to answer this question about studios. So key, of course, to what we're doing, and you're hearing a lot of it from Cara, from Jason, from me, it's about music studios, right? Because we know that really the confidence builder is to be in the studio that they know and they love. So first, the question is actually, how can a new music studio get involved with Dolby Atmos music, which I want to answer. But I also want to say, you know, what does that number you said mean, Christine, that almost 350 studios? Is it just any studio? No, it's, first of all, I want to be clear that Atmos is in market. You actually do not require Dolby to implement Atmos in a music studio. You can do that on your own. And there are agile solutions that start with the headphone, go to these smaller producer packs. They're perfect for bedroom engineers, and they'll scale up as high as you want to go, guys. That's what you can do into your premier studios. So there's the agility there, but the studios that are enabling, so for the most part, the way I said it's increasing every day is we're learning about it every day. It's real, it's in market. This is happening, right? And so it is, yes, top line mixers and producers who are enabling or already enabled with Dolby Atmos. We're thrilled about those. And it's also new and emerging. And how a new music studio can get involved with Dolby Atmos, you can call if you have connections already to your favorite integrator, reseller, et cetera, your tools partner. You know, people like Avid can help, Logic can help, et cetera. But also you can look on our website at professional.dolby.com. And on there, there's an ability to reach out and ask for references and guidance. So we're here for you. And this is what we love. We love working with the community. Okay, this question has come up a couple of times, so I'm going to just take it real quick. Oh, good. Sorry. Thank you so much. Actually, so they've just posted a QR code on the screen. You don't need to remember what I'm saying. You can just shoot that with your camera and it'll take you right where you need to go. Here's an important note. If you want our latest news all of the time, webinars, new announcements, etc., you want to opt in on that website. If you go to the website, it's wonderful. If you opt in on the website, you get love back. Okay, and then just one more question for you, Jason, maybe, and then we'll talk about closing comments. But there are a few people who have asked how you approach classical music, and that's yeah, please, that has specific love.
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of comes down to just working with the right people who are really attuned to that format. You know, I think that classical music is just so rich and vibrant and truly like a propulsive and beautiful style of music that it just goes back to working with the right people, you know, and also like making sure that, you know, either they have a background in classical or, you know, checking out other people's work. It's the same thing like in any kind of production of a song or an album. If there's someone whose work you admire and they have the capabilities within the format, reach out to them and be like, hey, do you want to do this? Like I kind of treat it as the same thing, you know, because what's the worst that can happen? They'll say no. Really, you know, I'm just gonna be completely honest. It's like, you know, that's the way. It goes back to admiration and appreciation of this art form.
That's fair. And Kara, you guys are having have those discussions, obviously at a central level. How are you handling that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the format exists, the studios exist, the documentation exists. There is no reason to not throw the hat in the ring. And so I'm also seeing a couple of questions asking about whether non-superstar artists, you know, are allowed to be released in this format. Allowed? Absolutely. This isn't, you know, a matter. This is not a matter of prioritization or prioritization of genre at all. This is something that's ubiquitous. This is in hundreds, if not thousands of studios globally, and freelance engineers globally. The skill set's everywhere. So yes, classical, it requires a slightly different type of mix because we may be talking about a 72-piece orchestra or a single opera performer. But absolutely, it works beautifully for classical. And it works beautifully for independent artists who are mixing their stuff solo and distributing it to us and sending us their final mixes without our intervention. This absolutely works across the board. But specifically on the classical piece, yes, I mean, it's something we're really actively doing. In fact, and also educating audiences about how Atmos sounds in classical. We've just released an album that is literally called Spatial Audio Classical Film Music, and it's part of an ongoing series. And we're also filming a bunch of sort of viral, cute, like video content that teaches people how to get the album, how to listen to it in the appropriate format, and what that user experience is, while throwing in a cute, you know, a couple of cute little jokes. But yeah, absolutely, this is something, you know, that we really love, and we're very passionate about how it plays back on classical music.
I love what you said. That's great. Yes, and I agree with you. I just have to nod back to the new and emerging artists. I mean, we all love those, and of course, that's absolutely the best way to introduce, you know, this to the masses in terms of what the full breadth of potential, right? So, yes, come one, come all. Ubiquity and love and passion. That's all we want to do. I so appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much for joining me on this discussion. Are there any parting comments that you want to make sure are heard from us? Did we do it?
Well, I'll do a cheap plug for 2 releases of mine. Let's see here. I just produced a 40th anniversary deluxe edition of The Replacements debut album, Sorry Ma, I Forgot to Take Out the Trash. Please go check that out on the either in a physical space or in the digital space of your choosing. And upcoming for Black Friday, there is a archival Little Feat concert from 1974 that's going to be released officially for the very first time in vinyl and CD format, and eventually in digital. So cheap plug on that.
Well, some sneak peeks. I love it. I love it. Anything you want to add, Cara, before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, then not necessarily plugs, because these albums have been plugged amazingly well. But I mean, our two biggest releases of the year, and our two most recent #1 albums, Coldplay and Sheeran, there's absolutely no surprise that the streaming counts are huge, and that they're also in Atmos. Like it's good music and it sounds good. Like the playback of this good music sounds good. So that to me just kind of sums up what we're trying to say. It's it's delivering an artist vision. It's mixed appropriately. It's on DSPs. It's loved by music editors, and it's loved by fans, right? And it sounds good whether it's on headphones or in your car or in your kitchen. So I think that, and also forgot to mention, we had just in the past few days, we had a fantastic Ed Sheeran kind of experiential event in central London. And that was also Atmos empowered. And I was talking to the creative director of that event just yesterday, and he was talking about being in Metropolis Studios and looking at the Atmos renderer, so that he wasn't just hearing all of the audio objects, he was looking at them on screen. And he really loved that. So, I mean, from somebody who was the creative director of the event, the Atmos tools, like the Creator Suite, really helped him understand the audio playback. So I think there's a lot to be said for the education piece there. Even within the engineering community, they really liked it. And then that results in a really nice user experience at the end and a nice playback on DSP experience at the end. So
Love it. Love
nice
it.
circle there.
We'll wrap up with that. Perfect. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for joining me.
Christine, Cara, Jason, thank you all so much for being here today. It was a pleasure having you, and really appreciate you sharing your expertise. And thank you all for attending today. Another great Music Biz webinar in the books. Glad to have you here, and hope to be welcoming you to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers, Christine.